Hello everyone, I am Argama Witch and this is the 5th time I am trying to record this video because I keep having technical difficulties. So let's hope this works this time. Yay! Kill me. Anyways, we are going to be doing an art tutorial with Argama Witch. I'm going to be showing you how I set up my paper, how I draw, and how we make comics. Because I've had a lot of people ask, well, and by lot I mean like 3 or 4 people have asked, how I set up my comic pages in Clip Studio Paint and so on and so forth. So I'm going to kind of give you a rundown on how to do that. It might go a little fast, and if that's the case, I'm sorry. I'll try to slow down on important parts. So let's start with your paper. I'm going to hit the new one. Usually you'll start here with the illustration. You can hit the purple one for a comic. It'll have standard sizes you can choose from. These are Japanese and Eastern publication sizes. So if you're going to use this, I would recommend you knew exactly which publication you're working for and what they required. You can also use this printing for a fanzine, but I say fuck that one and I jump right to the blue one. And this blue one allows you to customize what paper size you need. And if you're doing an American comic that's going to be printed in a physical copy, I recommend this. If you're going to do an online one, you can use any of them. You can even just use the illustration page. So this is the example I have set up. It's for my 24-hour Vtuber comic. The final binding size, the print size, so when you held it in your hand, the final size was supposed to be 7 inches by 10 inches. So over here, I have it set to units of inches. I make sure the manga draft settings is selected, and I have the finished size 7 by 10. In order to make sure that there is a bit of a bleed or a crop area, it's basically crop, I added a little bit extra. So it is 7.13 by 10.24, and these numbers I got directly from the people I'm getting mine printed through. And down here in the inner border, I subtracted an inch from the final binding, so you have 6 by 9. And that should be your safety. And they talk about safeties down here if you don't want to, the inner border there, and they also have a bleed thing there. If you some might want a particular bleed like 0.25 all the way around or 0.24 all the way around. This particular one had a very peculiar bleed zone. So this is how I set it, a crop zone. This is how I set it up. So we just hit OK, and we open it up. Now this inner border here, bada-boop, 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 right there, that inner border, that is the safe zone. And this border here, this little one, is the crop. Almost all physical comic book paper also have a bleed zone, and you want to go past that to make sure that your comic is at full bleed. And full bleed means that it's going to be printed past the page and cropped, so that way your picture doesn't have like a border there. It's going to actually go off the border. It's off the page. So it'll go off the page so you don't have a white border. Most comic places will offer a full bleed. That's usually what people want. If you're doing a 4 coma, you don't need full bleed. You can... yeah, that's fine. Alright, so a few things about the safe zone. Always, 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 always keep your word bubbles inside the safe zone along with any important art. All in the safe zone. Yay. Safe. Woo! So what the safe zone does, when you have a book bound, let's say you have a perfect book bound, which is when they use the glue in the corner, right? So there's like a pile of glue, and they like put glue over on the edge here, and when you open it up, you have like that thing, that crease, that center. And if you aren't in this safe zone, let's say you drew outside this safe zone, your word bubble is going to be like outside in this crease or whatever, or potentially out in that crease. So you're not going to be able to read what it says. So if you have like the safe zone it's always going to be in this area. People will always be able to read it. Another thing that's that you'd have to worry about, let's say you do saddle stitching, which is shorter comic books. Pretty much anything under 6. You can divide it into as many frames as you want. Bloop, 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 bloop. So you can keep going, you know? And then you go over to the operations tool, which is this hollow looking block with an arrow in it. And then you're going to be able to select any of these and you can adjust what you want it to look like. Oops. And then you can just adjust it. And this was my bad on adding that point. I didn't mean to add that point. So you can like expand it out. You can overlay it if you really want. You can shrink it down. And like, no, I want this one small. I want this one like here. I want this one jagged, acting all funky. Just grab whatever and you do whatever. You know what? So we have like very weird avant-garde comic pages. And now when you want to draw in any of these, you just grab the frame you want to draw in and do a new layer, and it pops up in there. And then you draw your picture. Which is great. And the reason I don't really care for this is that if you try to draw outside the layer, you cannot. Which is a good and a bad thing. It's because it's masked off. But sometimes it's really hard to kind of like gauge where things are going to be when you can't see off the layer. If you pull it outside, you can then see what you've drawn, but inside, not really so much. It's great for keeping everything contained. That being said, I don't really like this method, and I don't recommend this method. Delete layer. So let's go back up here. We're gonna go back up to layer, new layer, frame border. Again, we have this set at 15 pixels for the line width, and it's gonna have a draw its border. Bam. I like to do divide a frame border. This one we're going to do the same thing, but you notice that it doesn't put it in different folders. It's just dividing the border up. And that's what I like. Okay, we can go up to operations. We can also adjust, like if we want it to like scale over a border off the page to full bleed. So like those are full bleed. In fact, we can even click them and hit delete, so then we just have a borderless frame. Once you've decided how you want your frame set up, you then right click on the layer and you go to rasterize, which is right in the center. And now you have a separate border, a separate frame layer. I delete this because we don't need it anymore, and now we just have our border. Now when you draw, it's like on any other image. It's just on top. So, yay. Argama, which is yay. And this is a good example of, see how we have this in the safe zone here? This part isn't necessarily needed, but it's on full bleed, so it'll go off the edge and so on and so forth.